it was a really tough game tonight. And it's a game. It's a team where you would, everyone was happy to get Porto in that draw. There were certainly easier games, but there were a lot tougher games, and everyone was thinking, all right, we'll be favourites there. Went in as favourites rather, and lost the game.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Ramble Reacts. A bad night for Arsenal in Porto, and Liverpool widen the gap at the top of the Premier League. I'm Marcus Speller.
I'm Jim Campbell.
Well, hello everybody. I've missed you. And I sincerely hope you've missed me. Jim, you speak on behalf of the listeners. Have you missed me?
I have missed you. You
bless you.
You sound croaky, but it suits you.
Yeah, I think I've been told this before. I want to be a blues singer at some point, Jim. So
right.
This
so
is
you've
a sort of a
chaining cigars, have you?
There's half a step in that direction. I've been ill, everybody. It's not been. It's been very unpleasant. But I don't want to talk about that. I'd rather talk about Porto beating Arsenal 1-0, Jim, and heap the misery over to you.
Yeah, it's a strange sort of misery because it was just so sudden and so quick. I sort of had flashbacks of Naeem from the halway line in the mid-90s. It took me all the way back to childhood and a particularly scarring incident in my football life. Yeah. It was very avoidable. I feel like Martinelli's had a bit of criticism for not just kind of hanging on to the ball. We tried to release Saka with a fairly ambitious pass. It didn't pay off. At the time, I thought maybe Declan Rice could have got out quicker and just stopped shot happening at all. A bit of criticism of Raya's positioning, which I think is maybe a little unfair as well. But again, all of these things happen very quickly in the moment. We're recording very shortly after the end of the game. I think ultimately the responsibility lies with sort of between Martinelli and Rice for not stopping that shot from happening. It was a strange game because Porto are obviously a very industrious, very experienced, very very fit side, and I think that the fact that they were without the ball for so much of the game, but their fitness levels didn't drop at all is a sign of that, and a sign of quite how good teams are in the Champions League. It was a reminder of the trials and tribulations that you have to overcome if you're at that stage. Man City might disagree with getting Copenhagen as their draw, but there are very, very few games where you can sort of take anything for granted. And this was a reminder of that. And, Arsenal went to the game as favourites, but they were by far the sort of most inexperienced team of the two of them. And ultimately, it showed in just one moment. And that's how fine the margins can be.
Yeah, so to back that up, I'm sure everybody was aware that it was Arsenal's first Champions League knockout match for 7 years, which is incredible. They've now lost 5 consecutive knockout matches, which is quite damning. They went out to Portuguese opposition in last year's Europa League, although I don't really think that's too relevant. But the match against Porto was the first time Arsenal didn't have a shot on target in a match for 2 years.
Yeah,
so it shows you what a job Porto did on them.
Absolutely. I think it was an interesting performance from an Arsenal perspective because there was a lot of maturity to it at times. I think they handled a lot of the occasion very well in places. Declan Rice in particular getting a booking in I think the first minute, and it didn't affect his game at all. He played really, really, really well on a booking. You wouldn't really notice anything he adapted about his game to account for that. But I think the approach from Arteta was about control, right? It was about making sure that you kind of stay in the tie, and that you if it has to be cagey, if it has to be a little bit boring, then so be it. I think what was really quite impressive from Porto in particular was how they nullified Arsenal's threat from set pieces. There's a lot going on.
With that.
There was essentially chaos in the box, or it appeared to be chaos. I think Porto very much had a game plan of what they were doing there in terms of how they tried to disrupt Arsenal's set-piece delivery. And they certainly achieved that. And it really, really takes the sting out of how you feel it's going to go. As you say, no shots on target. That's a rarity. I think a lot of the kind of cross-field passing was off. There were quite a few occasions where the ball went out of play when a teammate was looking for a teammate across the pitch. The pitch looked absolutely huge, which I know is to do with the camera nests in Portugal. But it really added to the sense that this game was going to be really, really tough. And
you can get different sizes of pitches, of course.
Sure, but not like
double the size of
I'm
regular
not confident
pitches.
that I can make a judgment on that. based on where the cameras are in different stadiums. But the pitch looks huge. Everything looked a little bit difficult. And, at times, as the game wore on and it looked like it was going to be 0-0, I was thinking, I'm pretty happy with this. It's been a very mature performance. It makes it all level when you go back. And now, the game is completely different. Now, Porto are canny enough and wily enough and experienced enough in the Champions League. They're in it pretty much every season, very, very regularly. They've got very experienced players. We'll come on to Pepe in a moment, I'm sure. And they can try and enact a very, very bespoke game plan in London now, and that is something that's going to be difficult to navigate.
Yeah, well, they can basically do again what they did in the home tie.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think Arsenal fans and Arteta and co probably would have been, as you say, content with a 0-0, because you think, well, we back ourselves to beat them over two legs, and certainly to win at home in North London. Well, I still back Arsenal to beat them. It's just a case of, can they get more than one goal? And, well, I know those who are listening might go, well, hang on, they could go through on penalties. Okay, fine, you get the picture. I think that Arsenal, where I might sort of slightly disagree with you, is I thought Arsenal looked quite timid against Porto. I agree with you with Declan Rice. I mean, I find Rice, he has that kind of crazy challenge in him. I understand it was the first minute. I mean, I know the player would have sort of broken away a little bit, but he does dive in when it's a sort of 70-30 against him.
I think sometimes that came from a little bit of nerves, really. And I think that there are a lot of players, making their Champions League knockout stage debuts tonight, which is interesting, isn't it? Even players with a lot of Premier League experience and whatnot. And I think the occasion certainly seemed to get to them. First 5 minutes or so, there were a couple of passes like that were a little bit all over the place, and it looked a little bit nervy, and that crept in at different periods of the game. William Saliba was certainly not at his best. They really, really effectively marshalled Martinelli and Saka as well. And I take that. I think
so that kind of goes into the point then, doesn't it? That if you have players who are inexperienced at making Champions League debuts, and you go into a place which, look, is not the hardest place to go in the Champions League, but it is a familiar place and a team with a little bit of pedigree. I mean, they have won the Champions League the same amount of times, or the top prize the same amount of times as, or more so than some of the big clubs. But
sure.
You're going back into history now, which is quite unnecessary. Arteta's game plan was, okay, let's go there, let's control it, and let's not lose.
Yeah,
because we'll go back to the Emirates and we'll whip them. Now that still is the plan.
Yes,
ultimately, it's just got to do with a bit more purpose. But the problem is at the Emirates, half time it's 0-0.
Yeah.
50 minutes, 60 minutes.
Well, you know what?
Pepe will just be going,
yeah. Well, it'll be a real test of the new look, fun time, good vibes Arsenal, won't it?
Yeah.
Really? Because that is going to be a stressful situation should it occur. And you have to mitigate against it as someone in the crowd. You have to try and do the best you can to just support the team in every challenge. And I think it will be better than it has been in the past, because I think what frustrates fans of any team is same old, isn't it? And this is a completely different team from the ones that have gone out in the last 16 of the Champions League before. And also, it's it's a challenge. There's a very, very specific set of circumstances you have to achieve. It's almost a mission. So hopefully it won't come to that. But as you say, Pepe, what a fascinating footballer he is, because you look at that game in advance as an Arsenal player and you think, you know what, you want to get Martinelli in particular in one-on-ones against Pepe, and he got nothing out of him, absolutely nothing. And you would think in a foot race Martinelli's going to smash him every time over and over again, but it didn't really ever get into a situation where that mattered.
Well, and because Porto wouldn't let it happen, that's why.
Indeed.
They were, and Varela playing in front of the back line, he was superb, wasn't he?
The other Pepe was very good too.
Yeah, wasn't. Yeah, one's never enough, although one is actually
too many, quite often.
Yeah, we would argue. But Pepe, the Portuguese man, or originally from Brazil, of course, he became the oldest outfield player to play in the Champions League knockout stages.
Yeah,
which is phenomenal. The man just goes on and on, and like I often say with players that get that old and are still playing at the top level, or any level really, without being too kind of silly about it. It's the physicality and all that kind of stuff is obviously very, very impressive. It's the desire that I kind of admire. The desire that he still wants to kick people. He still wants to. He booted his own goalkeeper at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have you. I genuinely admire it because there he is. They're there and doing it for a Porto side who, what are they, third in Portugal? They're not pulling up too many trees back home.
Their home record's been very good this season, though.
He has been, yeah. I believe Andre Villas-Boas is trying to become their next president.
That's right, yeah. There's a bit of a tussle going on in the boardroom. But with Pepe as well, it's not just the desire, because I saw recently Thiago Silva talking about what he does, basically, to be able to play at this level at his age. So, you would assume that Pepe has to do something similar to be able to play at that level at his age.
Yeah.
But it's like, going to bed really, really early, going straight home and getting into sort of various different really expensive kind of sci-fi chambers to like give yourself the proper recovery. And it's like, you don't really do a lot other than play football.
Would you want him doing anything else?
It's an incredible commitment. Surely he would like to do something else.
Yeah, but would you, Jim? We're not happy. Whenever he goes to work, we see where he is. We know what he's doing.
To be honest, that wasn't ideal for me tonight.
Yeah, true.
Despite him being 40, I would have preferred not to see him.
You were one of the unlucky ones. Yes, so let's talk about Wenderson Galeno, who scored the goal, of course. He scored and assisted 8 Champions League goals this season, because we put assists and goals in the same thing now. Even if an assist now is just a very subtle sideways pass to a player 40 yards out, and then he beats everybody and stuffs it.
It's a goal involvement, mate.
It's a goal involvement. Yeah. I don't know how we got to this, but there we are. But it's more than any other player in the competition so far this season, apparently, which is quite impressive.
Greedy, isn't it?
It was. I mean, just as well for him he scored, because he missed 2 chances.
Yeah, the one in the first half where he hit the bar and then kind of volleyed the rebound wide with his left foot. Hit the bar with his right foot, volleyed the rebound wide with his left foot, possibly in a sort of quite slapstick tribute to Andy Brehmer.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. That's how I remember it through the fear. But it was so confusing. It was one of those ones where it happened so quickly. It was like there was a force field on the goal. I just did not understand how it didn't go in. Delighted it didn't. But again, I mean, we've not really mentioned that. But that was a gift. Arsenal really, really got away with that. Again, possibly this is inexperience showing at that level.
Well, I would have liked it to have gone in just to see what Arsenal would have done. Now, of course, we'll see what they're going to do in the second leg. They're going to have to properly go for it, because the thing is with Arsenal, they could win that game 4-0 at the Emirates. I think
I think Porto are too wily for that.
Yes, I don't think they will win it 4-0, but I think that Arsenal, when they get their tails up, I mean, Arsenal, Miguel Delaney was making the point, are they the biggest side in Europe not to have won the Champions League? Atletico Madrid might suggest otherwise.
Yeah,
but, Arsenal,
certainly
a huge side
between those two.
They're going, up theirs. They're going well in the Premier League. We know what they can do, scoring a lot of goals. Porto are all about just restricting them tonight. But I mean, of course, you stick in there, you get chances, or you get a moment of quality, or whatever it may be, and suddenly they're 1-0 up. I mean that goal from Galeno. You mention a few people in that move with Martinelli playing the ball out, and rightly so. My initial thought when it went in was, and it's harsh because that's a great goal, so we're nitpicking here, but my initial thoughts were, could David Raya have done a little more there?
Yeah, I agree with you. That was on my mind, and that was my initial thought.
When the ball goes in and I saw Raya dive, I thought, he's not getting that. And it was just, I think if another little step, it was the feet, I think. But I mean, look, I'm not an expert in goalkeeping, so and I think it's not a howler or anything, but it's just those tiny little teensy ones.
Margins, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is what is, again, something that is a real reminder actually of how important those things are in the Champions League, because I feel like when this game comes back to the Emirates for the second leg, if Arsenal score early, Porto won't change their game plan. They're not going to suddenly start busting a gut for a winner. They will stay calm, and they will still try and just be confident that they're going to get a couple of chances and try and be ruthless with those chances. They won't do the thing that you expect of teams in the Premier League, of course, to start chasing the game because they've got nothing to lose. It's about those little moments and those, those I suppose expressions of maturity, and Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. Even if they went 2-0 down early on, in a sense, they're still a goal away from extra time or whatever it may be. Well, we shall see about that. So Arsenal, they're 1-0 down after the first leg, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Despite that, though, can Arsenal go on and progress into the latter stages and maybe, dare I even say, go all the way in this competition?
I think they can progress through this round. I would be astonished if they won it, to be honest.
So you wouldn't put them down as one of the favourites?
I don't think so. I think it's because of the inexperience of it. It's easy to, predict things that are going to happen on paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it was a really tough game tonight. And it's a team where you would, everyone was happy to get Porto in that draw. There were certainly easier games, but there were a lot tougher games, and everyone was thinking, all right, we'll be favourites there. Went in as favourites rather, and lost the game. Lost the game in slightly weird circumstances, because I think, if you look at it on paper, and Arsenal didn't have any shots on target, and they lose to a late goal, it sounds like it was a worse performance than it was. It was a very sort of kind of almost deliberately cagey, control-focused performance. But that said, I mean, can you do that in the Bernabeu?
Yeah, well, exactly.
If you have to play City over 2 legs, are you going to be able to
Man City
control
clearly,
not just the quality of it, but the emotion of it as well?
Yeah.
I think Arsenal can and will get past Porto, but I don't think they're gonna win the competition. The whole, the idea behind the project is getting Arsenal to a point where they're regularly there and can build that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you're right. I think Real Madrid and Manchester City, for example, will be above them. I might even put one or two others. You could even say Inter.
Teams like Inter, of course. Inter or Atletico, whoever gets through that. It's the experience, isn't it?
What about Bayern? What about Thomas Tuchel's Bayern?
Well,
maybe if they progress, though, it could be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Bayern. We certainly hope.
Or Jose's Bayern.
Yeah.
Possibly a job share, who knows?
Yes, he'll definitely be up for that, because we will. Elsewhere in the Champions League tonight, Barcelona and Napoli drew 1-1 in Naples. It was Francesco Calzone's first game in charge of Napoli after they sacked Walter Mazzarri. Not having a good time of it of late, Napoli. And when I say of late, I mean specifically this season, because last season they were pretty damn good.
I think they'd take that, though, wouldn't they?
They would. Yeah, I mean...
Actually, we've been to Napoli. None of them would take it. They're all a lot. As individials, they are a lot.
Yeah,
They'll be
go
fuming
to the
about
terraces. There, go. Yeah, but you guys would take this, wouldn't you?
You're champions.
Yeah, you might be 9th, but I mean, it's a piss poor title defence, but it could be worse.
All right, Vesuvius, calm down. They would not appreciate it.
No, I don't think they would. But I think they would appreciate your sense of history, though. Or maybe that would just be me, but perhaps we shouldn't ponder on that too much. But yes, not having a good time of it. Calzona has come in. He's been at the club before, but yeah, Mazzarri didn't do very well. Rudy Garcia was given the job after Spalletti left. And Spalletti left. Spalletti very clever. Very, very clever.
Absolutely.
This is what I said.
Get out of there.
Yeah, this is what I said when Moyes won the Europa Conference League. I said, get out of there. It's never going to get. This is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
Spalletti has played an absolute blinder. He wins the league in stunning fashion, and then rides out there on his in his car, which they just given back to him or whatever, because they what did they nick his car door or something, or steering wheel,
something like that.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, cheers, and you'll never see me again.
Absolutely.
So he's played a blind. So Calzone's first game is a knockout game against Barcelona. Now Barcelona, we know, aren't the side that they were a few years ago, of course, but they've still got Robert Lewandowski and some pretty handy players. And so I think, 1-1 draw. I didn't watch the game because watching Arsenal, I think, having had a sort of a little quick sniff around after the match, see what everybody thought. Not too shabby.
Not at all. Not as your first game, as you say. It's not quite a free hit. It's never going to be that in a job that big. But it's.
Imagine if he'd have said that. Well, it's a bit of a free hit, isn't it?
But he's not. Naturally, isn't going to have had a huge amount of time to get up to speed with who his players are and how
came in about 2 days ago.
His system.
Yeah.
So it's very, very impressive.
Yeah. Well, but it's funny you say that he didn't. That's he. Because Because when Garcia came in, and then Garcia played totally different style of football to Spalletti, and then Mazzarri did as well. Was actually Calzone's just said, right, I'm just hitting the reset button. They know what to do. I've been given a great team. They know how to play. So he must have just flicked through Spalletti's handover notes or whatever and gone, well, let's just bloody do this. So like, what were the other guys thinking? So yeah, they went 1-0 down. Robert Lewandowski scored, of course, because he willed it. But what was lovely was to see Victor Osimhen scoring as well. It was
that was a lovely goal.
Back from the Africa Cup of Nations as well, where every time I saw him at the Africa Cup of Nations, I just thought he looks injured or he's just something not quite right. So to see him scoring a big goal in a big game like this, I was quite pleased.
He's one of those players who just, on first sight of him in a match, there's something different about him. There's an X factor. There's something there. It's like, wow, there's something about this player that he's got a little bit more than the other professional footballers running around on this pitch. There's something about maybe the fluidity in his movement. There's something quite graceful about him. It could be the mask, actually. Yeah, that's
no,
that's
you
exactly
are right. It's quite pleasing though when you see 1-1 who scored. Lewandowski and Osimhen, two of the top strikers.
In fact, when in the commentary of the Arsenal Porto game, when Darren Fletcher mentioned that Osimhen had scored in that game, Ali McCoy's just went, "Oh." I think we all felt like that, didn't we? Oh, I can't wait to watch that later.
Yeah. Very good, very good.
I agree with you, football's favourite uncle.
Yeah. Well, do make sure you listen to On the Continent later today, where Dotton and Andy will be joined by Nicky Bandini to chat more about this game and what Napoli can expect from their new boss. Search On the Continent in your podcast apps to listen now. Yes. Now, just staying with Barcelona for a moment. Apparently, they've been hunting a mole in the dressing room who has allegedly been leaking club secrets to the press.
Because there aren't many clubs where I would ask for clarification on whether it was a literal mole or not. But Barcelona are currently one of them. So I'm glad you clarified that this is a person and not just an actual mole that's causing chaos in there, because they're just that much of a joke at the moment.
It's strange, isn't it, the footballing landscape, how it can change so dramatically in Barcelona.
I think the funny thing with Barcelona as well is obviously, they're a team that a lot of football fans have various feelings about. They've done a lot of good things, of course. We all love some of the teams they've put together, but they have behaved in a way in the past that is frustrating, and where they try and get under the skin of other teams and extract their players and etc. etc. etc.
They're the good guys though, Jim. That's what they
are. Well, indeed, they're more on the club, aren't they? Yeah. But like you kind of forget that they're in this situation. You look away for a moment and you look back. It's like, oh, of course, it's absolute chaos, and they can't spend any money. Yet they are spending money, and they're sort of selling their future. And they every time you look away and look back, they're doing something mad. And I don't really think we've seen the worst of it yet, because they are kind of mortgaging their future, or certainly looking to do that with some of the deals they're talking about making. They've just had their salary cap reduced, which are absolutely fuming about. It's like, you have to stop spending money.
I don't get it.
Don't you understand this?
Basic arithmetic is just not on their agenda. Although, by the sounds of it, Jim, when you're talking about all these deals, the mole seems to be feeding you some very tasty information.
Well, indeed. I couldn't possibly tell you who it is.
Mind how you go, because they might come looking for you. Right then, let's come all the way back home to bonny old England, because in the Premier League, Liverpool beat Luton Town 4-1.
Yeah, enemies of football.
Yeah, well, yes, Arsenal and Manchester City's title rivals move 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League after their big win, which is lovely stuff for them, because they've got the cup final on the weekend, and whatever happens, they'll be top of the league.
Absolutely, they've been impressive since they lost at the Emirates. They've just won every game since pretty handily as well.
3 in a row.
3 in a row. They've got a lot of injuries. They're essentially missing a first team.
Well, they were without 11 first team players.
It's very, very impressive. And again, it's the strength and depth that they've not quite pulled together quickly, but given they finished 5th last season, the leap they've made in quality is really, really impressive. And when you factor in missing that many players, it's a further illustration of it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, So 11 first-team players missing is obviously pretty big, and then you look, and including the goalkeeper, of course, who's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world, and then you look at the players that they've got still there, Van Dijk, McAllister, Endo, Gakpo, and Diaz. But yeah, you are right to point that out. But then Harvey Elliott comes on, and so he starts the game and obviously scores. Yeah, exactly. McAllister, a couple of assists and so on. I mean, Luis Diaz gets one. The 1-0 down, Luton had them going for a little bit, But then in that second half, they just blitzed them. And Luton Town fans, I know how you feel. I know how you feel.
Yeah.
That's just, it's the hope that kind of kills you, really. But it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. And winning 1-0 at half-time at Anfield, that's a collector's item. You know, like you'll never forget that. You'll never forget how you felt. You know, I used to. There was a guy I used to work with who was a big Crystal Palace fan, and everyone else in the office supported. Well, I say everyone else. There was a handful of guys where we all used to sit, and Arsenal fans, Chelsea fans, man, the usual. And the Palace fan, he was a top lad, and he followed them home and away everywhere, and he went up to Old Trafford. And Palace fans will remember this game. They lost. Pretty sure it was 5-2 at Old Trafford. I think old Gabor Kirai was in goal.
Right.
For Palace in back in those days. Could be wrong, but I think so. Kirai saved a penalty, or Man United have missed a penalty. And then, of course, in the second half, normality is resumed, if you like. And on Monday morning in the office, people were like, the Man United fans giving it plenty and saying, I bet you had a crap time. And he was like, lads, what are you talking about? I had an amazing time. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had them going. Like, I saw my side score 2 goals at Old Trafford and they missed a penalty. Like, it's such a bonus. You go there thinking,
you're right.
And back in those days, obviously, Old Trafford was a fortress. Now, I think he'd be gutted if they went there and they lost 5-2.
This is it. You're supposed to enjoy it. And I suppose you've got to make the most of the moments in which you can enjoy it. You're absolutely right.
Exactly, yeah. So I've no doubt Luton Town fans had a lovely old time. I'll tell you who did have a lovely old time by the end of it was Jürgen Klopp. Yeah. My goodness, he was fist pumping every end of the stadium, every stand in the stadium.
Yeah, which is completely reasonable, isn't it?
Do you think?
Yeah. You got to enjoy the moments, didn't you?
You do, yeah. I thought we were gonna catch you as the celebratory police Jim there.
Well, one thing I would say is that obviously we saw in the Arsenal celebrations after the Liverpool game, Mikel Arteta sort of doing some kind of big fist pumps, and it's sort of our thing. So
is that right?
I suppose if they're stealing our stuff, it's a bit of a compliment. You have to take it that way.
Yeah,
but
quoting Curtis
shows
Jones
we're doing
there.
something right. I am quoting Curtis Jones. Yeah.
Just in case anyone's lost on what Jim's doing and he's gone mad. What do you think of that celebration that Klopp and 1 or 2 other managers have done it? But we all think of Klopp where he does that, where he sort of runs up and ooh, and then he goes way with a fist. I kind of think it's a bit wank. I've no doubt I'd probably get involved if it was happening. I can't imagine Marco Silva doing that to the Putney end at Fulham. Like, it'd be very... Everyone would go, what bloody... Is he attacking us? What's going on here? Marco, behave yourself. Well, not very Fulhamish at all. But, like, I can imagine, like, going, all right, more for the manager's sake, like if Southgate at Wembley or something, after we just hammered, San Marino 11-0, But I do think it is a little bit wank, that particular celebration.
Well, I think Klopp is obviously a very emotional person and draws a lot of energy from emotion. But I also think he's a clever and calculated person as well. I think he knows that pumping up at Anfield for the rest of the season is going to be advantageous for them. So the more
don't give a politician's answer, Jim. What do you think of the celebration?
Answer. I think it's political. I think he's doing it.
No, he's always done it
to draw something from. But yeah, absolutely, and it's always worked, isn't it? It's a part of that connection they have. It's a part of how they get that atmosphere pumping. Is it a bit wank? I mean, yeah, it doesn't. I don't feel anything for it, but it's not for me, is it?
Yeah, but Jim, what if a manager rocks up at Arsenal? Say Mikel Arteta. It's the kind of thing he might suddenly start doing next season or towards the end of the season.
We did it a little while ago. We all enjoyed it.
Yeah, true. All right, fair enough.
He actually did a really good thing tonight that we didn't get to talk about. A nice little bit of shithousing. He stopped Porto taking a quick throw by throwing another ball onto the pitch, which I'm a big fan of. Big fan of.
Well, more of that in the Premier League, please. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for listening to Ramble Reacts. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do join us once again on Friday for the preview show where we will be dishing out more of this kind of nonsense. In the meantime, find us on Twitter, currently known as X, I believe, TikTok, Instagram and YouTube at Football Ramble, and do follow us on Spotify, headed up by big Daniel Ek, who's an Arsenal fan. I'm sure he's a Spurs sympathiser as well if you hate Arsenal that much, so do get involved in Spotify. You can't put it's a bit like...
You're right, you've got to hedge your bets.
It's a bit like with Rangers and Celtic. They used to have the same sponsor. If Carling wanted everyone in Glasgow to drink Carling, you can't sponsor one, you got to do the other as well.
Don't give a politician's outro.
Well, that was a shambolic outro, which I think you'll find is very fitting at the moment in British politics. So up yours. See you Friday.
Cheers for watching another fantastic clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Make sure you click like on this video and subscribe to the channel, which means you will not miss a single upload.